Looks like Jim catching him taking a mulligan, and Brennan's going to join him. The black-green version with the fatal push that can give you some fits playing the shadow deck, but Gurmag Angler does get around that. Generally wants to fade the turn 3 warm coil engine. That one can be a pretty serious problem. Whether you're ferocious or not, Stubborn Denial can kind of manage the early Karn draws.
Okay.
And the Ugin draws. You can punish them with your counter magic, but warm coil engine is tough to beat even with a Teamer Battle Rage. Both players mulliganing generally is going to benefit the Tron player. It's just a deck that on average mulligans better.
Well, Jim will still set up Tron because I think in this matchup, Jim is the control deck in the sense of the pressure is on Brennan to do something. If they play long enough, Jim's favored.
If you're just passing land drops back and forth, the Tron deck's going to start doing more powerful things.
Exactly.
Many of which just cover your plays.
Both players in here on 6s, then we'll see where they keep.
Jim looks really iffy on his hand there.
Yeah, that phase. Just, ooh,
am I gonna play this? Ugh.
Yeah.
Both players certainly know what the other player's on. You see both of them rocking the Team BCW attire here.
Both players keeping. Jim's going to be on the play here.
And losing the die roll, it's a bad sign for Brennan. Puts even more pressure on his hand.
Sure.
It's like both players trying to the top, and we're ready to go.
All right. Shake hands. They know lots on the line here for the teammates. Turn 1 going to be an Urzatron piece for Jim. It looks like he has one that's full up on lands, but no real payoff.
Well, that's a hand that you can't really thought sees out of Tron.
Sure. For Brennan, Bloodstained Mire will send him down to 17 to start. Imagine in this matchup, it's pretty free to deal all this damage to yourself.
Yeah. It is both free and desirable as you want to cast Death Shadow as quickly as possible. There's some weird games where sometimes you get burned out by Ugin and you think, I think I could have played around that. But generally, it's not how things go.
So Brennan, just look at this. Fetch, Shock, Street Wraith, down to 13. Draws Thoughtseize. He could be down to 11 on the first turn.
Pretty full on discard spells. He already has a Teamer Battle Rage.
Inquisition of Kozilek. So we'll see Urza's Mine, another Power Plant, a Snow-Covered Forest, Walking Ballista, and Oblivion Stone. So Inquisition of Kozilek actually can hit anything.
I see why Jim was stink-facing this hand.
Yeah, it's not great.
It doesn't actually have Tron. We're shy
well,
of Tower.
It has 2 pieces of Tron, but then if it finds Tron, it has a No Stone. I mean, I get also that. I also understand why he didn't mulligan it.
Yeah. You have a few pieces, so you can find pretty easy ask at the top of your deck to find that Urza's Tower with the basic forest, redraws with Sylvan Scrying, and Ancient Stirrings can be very significant on those lines. Once you get Tron, doesn't take too many haymakers to win this matchup.
Sure.
Oblivion Stone in most of your games is pretty easy to hit with a Stubborn Denial. You see DecCandio taking the Walking Ballista.
Yeah. Go back over to Jim. Karn. So there's a payoff spell. It is vulnerable to the Thoughtseize in Brennan's hand. Jim plays a second Tron piece. Could always top deck the third.
Yeah, I believe Jim scribed that Karn to the top, so the thinking is you're
sure.
gonna get hit by a turn 1 discard spell, maybe you draw Tower after that, and you're good to go.
But look, you gotta be concerned here because Brennan is down to 13, and at this turn he really might be all the way down to 8, and he does have a Teamer Battle Rage in his opening hand. Just 1 Death Shadow with that could be enough.
That is a fast kill.
Yeah, Fetch, Shock, Thoughtseize Brennan down to 8. Jim's gonna lose the Karn. He said, yeah, that's what I drew. Brennan just, get rid of that guy.
I will take your good card. You can have the Oblivion Stone.
I mean, the problem with Jim is that if he leaves you the Karn, you just know you're getting Stubborn Denialed.
Yeah.
And we do see from Brennan, he's going to delve away 5 for Tasigur here.
Tasigur is less threatening than Shadow, but it is a very real clock.
Yeah, it turns that Battle Rage into a 4-point burn spell. We do see Relic of Progenitus from Jim.
Great
a little
timing.
late, a little late.
Great timing on that one. Still a redraw.
Yeah.
Might just see Jim play the O-Stone here, and if he draws into Tron, he'll be able to crack that sooner than later.
I kind of like that. I don't want that way it gets around a possible Stubborn Denial.
Yeah, you do kind of play into Colligan's command, which is the fear.
Yeah, you're right.
Brennan on 2 main deck copies. Jim will cast the Relic, play his basic forest, get that Thoughtseize out of Brennan's graveyard, and pass the turn.
All right, so we're going to hold off on the Oblivion Stone. So start taking some hits off this Tasigur.
Looks like a Thought Scour available, in addition to Temur Battle Rage here for Brennan. I want to say 2 lands on top of that. Not a great hand. He's kind of relying on Jim doing a little bit more bricking. Technically, with the Battle Rage, if there's no additional threat, this is a 4-turn clock because you Battle Rage on the final turn.
See how low he wants to go. Brennan fetching down to 7. And he'll stop there. No Death Shadow in hand yet, just gets basic Island.
Yeah, his life total is already low enough where the Shadow is a very significant draw anyway.
Especially with Battle Rage, I guess, in his hand. Shadow's already going to be lethal.
Right.
Thought Scour targets himself. Now, of course, Relic of Progenitus is in play.
Yeah, won't be able to set up for another Delve threat.
Angler, the basic Swamp is gone.
Yeah, that's fine. That's really 2 cards that he didn't want to draw.
Draws into, looks like, Opt off it. Tasigur hits Jim down to 16. Opt from Brennan. We'll see when Jim wants to pull the trigger here. I think he's counting. Right now, he's probably still okay.
Yeah, it's only card number 5. It's not like Brennan's going to cast another Tasigur.
Yeah, he needs to cover Gurmag Angler.
Ooh, and it's the other card in Brennan's hand is not a land, but it's just as bad as a Terminate.
Yeah, it's not really going to play against Tron. Brennan draws into a fetch land after scrying to the bottom on Opt, and he passes. Jim will crack Relic.
Looking for that Urza's Tower.
Well, he drew Ancient Stirrings, so that could do it. That was off the Relic of Progenitus. And drew a Llanowar Wastes. I'm going to start with some Stirrings.
Because Brennan main phased that Opt, that means he's no longer representing Stubborn Denial. So in this turn, no matter what the 4th land is, Jim can just cast Oblivion Stone. But hey,
there's a tower.
That's easy.
Yeah. Now, do you want to wait on the O-Stone to make sure it can't get Colligan's commanded?
With Brennan tapping the way that it suggests that he just doesn't have Stubborn Denial, and he still might have Colligan's command.
That was what I was getting at, yeah. Especially because Jim's hand has 2 lands in that O-Stone. He's not going to play around. He wants to be safe from Colligan's command. That's really smart.
He needs this one to convert. And Brennan also scribed to the
Brennan
bottom.
Just draw Stubborn Denial.
That's also smart.
That is.
I like the way he drew his good card.
Oh gosh.
That is very smart.
Get punished.
He is a skilled magician.
Oh, that's gonna matter so much.
Yeah. Yeah, Jim is now back to top decking.
This is so gross.
Yeah, contextually, I think he made the right call. But
I agree, but he's gonna get punished real bad for it.
Yep.
Floats a mana through Chromatic Sphere. It has a green floating. Drew Ancient Stirrings. Gonna cast Ancient Stirrings. Brennan says fine.
Finding Wormcoil Engine here would be quite powerful.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. Tower, Relic. So there's options.
Yeah, these ones aren't great. None of them are 6/6 lifelinking creatures.
No, I'd like one of those. Finds Relic, takes Relic of Progenitus. At least it's a redraw. And this is just the brutal part. He's going to, he goes for this O Stone.
And he is paying respect to the Stubborn Denial. You see him tapping off the mana to activate the Oblivion Stone. He was looking for a different line for this turn.
There we go. Here's O Stone. And Brennan, I drew this Stubborn Denial. And there it goes. So now Jim will have to find a way to answer the Tassiger. He does not have too many turns left, especially with that Teamer Battle Rage in Brennan's hand.
Yeah. Yeah, he'll have just one more turn facing what he's facing. Still has some really good draws. Now the Stubborn Denial's out. DecCandio is kind of top decking against any top decks for Jim.
Jim hasn't played a land yet this turn. He used the mana to exile away the Relic again, redraws. Into Expedition map. That doesn't really do much.
He's also put a lot of non-Wormcoil Engine cards on the bottom of his library. Might not want to shuffle.
Map and Tron piece. Yeah, I agree actually. Because he already has enough mana to cast Ulamog as well. There's nothing in his deck he can't cast. I'd rather not shuffle these blanks back in.
Yeah. Brennan gonna give this shuffle off the fetch land. His hand still terminating Teamer Battle Rage. Actually, that's a hand that beats Wormcoil Engine.
What do you mean?
So you go for your attacks, Wormcoil blocks, 4 damage. You're gonna Battle Rage, you're gonna terminate the Wormcoil, and you'll trample in for 8.
Yeah, that's it. That does work. Jim gonna crack the map. Mentioned we weren't completely a fan here. He's gonna Kolaghan's Command in response. Brennan will make him discard that last card in his hand, but it was Llanowar Wastes.
So Jim's kind of drawing to Karn, Ugin, and Ulamog now.
He gets Sanctum of Ugin. Trey, I think we're shuffling about 7 blanks back in. I'm not a big fan here.
Walking Ballista is actually good here.
Okay, and that is shuffled in. That was actually taken early. Never mind. That's exiled away at the Relic. He just has the 1, so it's going to be good. That's gone. Draw 1 more for Jim. Does it hit? Expedition map. I don't think so. He doesn't know it yet.
He'll find out pretty quick.
Yeah, Sanctum of Ugin map. Brennan says, yeah, I got a Battle Rage. That's going to do it. Brennan DecCandio takes game 1.
He's also showing off the Terminate.
Like, yeah, I still had this too.
Yeah, had you pretty covered there, friend.
All right, so game 1 goes over to Grixis Death's Shadow, and they're going to move over toward the sideboard. We'll be back with sideboarding and game 2 in just a minute. Welcome back here. Game number 2 about to start here. Jim Davis losing game 1 to Brennan DecCandio. Both teammates here, Team BCW. On Jim's side, he looks over to his sideboard. 4 Collective Brutality, 3 Thragtusk, 2 Nature's Claim, 2 Thoughtseize, 2 Seal of Primordium, a Ghost Quarter, and then an extra basic with that Swamp.
Not a lot going on here that you care about.
Yeah, I don't even care for Thragtusk very much because it doesn't size up that well against Shadow.
It matches up with the Delve creatures, so
yeah.
that's something. It's not horrible. Thoughtseize is okay in the matchup. It lets you fight over Stubborn Denial a little more effectively.
Right. You expect that Brennan will be higher on counter spells, so that makes sense.
Yep.
I got some Brennan's side, and he has a bunch of counter spells. 3 Ceremonious Rejection, 2 Collective Brutality, 2 Lightning Bolt, 2 Liliana of the Veil, a Disdainful Stroke, a Liliana's Defeat, a Nizzet Staticaster, an Engineered Explosives, a Nile Spellbomb, and then that 4th Stubborn Denial.
Yeah, so the Ceremonious Rejections, they're great. They
Yeah.
just counter all the cogs, they counter the Haymakers as well. Very powerful in the matchup. Disdainful Stroke will cover the Haymakers. That one's really nice. And the extra Stubborn Denial covers a lot of the deck as well.
Yeah, so with Brennan having all that counter magic, I actually do like Jim reaching for something like Thoughtseize in this matchup.
And because of Ceremonious Rejection, the Thragtusk actually is pretty appealing.
Okay, you think you might actually go for that?
Yeah. Spells you can actually resolve are preferred to spells that get
Yeah,
countered.
so how does that work then? So for Jim, I guess, I'm looking at cards that can be both Stubborn Denialed and Ceremonious. Do you have to cut cards like Ugin from the deck for this matchup?
The fact that it costs 8, you don't really want it. You keep in Ulamog just because the trigger is so powerful, but Ugin can be lower impact.
I mean, Ugin is game over if it resolves.
Yeah, generally.
But maybe, I don't know, you can't just board in these Thrag Tusks and keep all the other high end, not against a deck like this.
Yeah, you do have to get online quickly. You also want to maintain these stars and spheres to make sure that you can actually cast your fatal pushes. And Tron kind of a delicate deck to sideboard with. My understanding that a lot of it is just kind of trimming and moving things around.
Jim will be on the play here for the second game. Remember, both players on 6-card hands that time. Jim did end up making Tron, but his problem was that he just didn't have a payoff spell.
Yeah.
And you see he takes a mulligan again.
And when he did, got hit by Stubborn Denial.
that was unreasonable.
Yeah. Do you think it was reasonably unreasonable?
That was unreasonably unreasonable.
I'll agree. Brennan looks to be keeping 7 here. It's more bad news for Jim. Though sometimes you just have natural Tron and haymakers in hand.
Brennan has kept on 7. It still does demand specific answers. Game 1, I don't mind the mulligan as much because a lot of times Jim will just Tron up into something and Brennan will shrug. The game will end. With so many more counter spells in the main, or in the sideboard in these games, I think the mulligans do hurt more on Jim's side.
Things definitely get harder post sideboard.
Yeah, your turn 3 Karn just probably isn't resolving. It's your second Karn that might get him.
Right. Being on the play is a nice advantage. One of the spells that's most satisfying and most important to counter in the matchup is actually Expedition Map, because it's just the 1-mana spell that gets you in and sets up Tron.
Chromatic Sphere, turn 1 from Jim, off in Urza's Mine. He's got, don't know if he has another land. It looks like he has Sylvan Scrying, though.
DecCandio actually, I think, is on a 1-lander.
Okay. See Blooming Marsh from Jim. He's going to see if he can hit a second Tron piece here when he cracks Chromatic Sphere, making a green. Finds Ancient Stirrings.
That card's good at finding more Tron pieces.
It is. He also has Sylvan Scrying, so telling us to sequence here. I like this. Plays the land and then plays Ancient Stirrings. The land plays first so that Stubborn Denial doesn't hit him.
Yep, that is good sequencing.
Now he'll stir. He's going to hope to find a Tron piece and then and then Scry for the last one.
And he found that.
So there's Urza's Tower. It's a setting up for turn 4 Tron on Jim's side.
Depending at how fast Brennan's hand is, that's usually a fine time to set it up.
Yeah, here's Chromatic Sphere. Stubborn Denial check. Nah, Brennan will opt. You said the 1-lander, maybe looking for a land here?
Yeah. Looks like a few interactive spells and at least 1 discard spell, so finding a second land probably pretty good for him. Don't know if he has a threat just yet. He will need that.
Teamer Battle Rage. Brennan actually not interested.
No, thank you. Yeah, if he doesn't have a threat, he most certainly doesn't want that.
Yeah. And Street Wraith the draw. He still doesn't have that land. Oh, wait, he has a Steam Vents.
All right, that's good.
And actually, it looks like he did have Stubborn Denial. Just no interest. Goes down to 15.
Yeah, on the Chromatic Sphere, not a great target.
Now, he has Terminate. He drew that here, and I'm a little surprised to see the card in the deck.
Yeah, that one is not great in the matchup. I guess he's trying to be able to pick some spots where he can actually beat Wormcoil Engine. It's a little ambitious.
Thought sees from Brennan. He sees Tron land, Sylvan Scrying, Ancient Stirrings, Wormcoil Engine. So it's going to be really hard to keep Jim off Tron. But then you look at Brennan's hand. He has a Ceremonious Rejection and a Stubborn Denial. Where do you want to go with this?
Because you have the Wormcoil covered, you might go for Ancient Stirrings or Sylvan Scrying.
He takes Scrying. Part of me just wanted to take the worm anyway and just keep, say, all right, well, now I have the next worm covered.
If you can keep Jim off of Tron, then your game's a lot easier.
Sure. Steam Vents untapped, go. Brennan down to 11. Jim draws Expedition Map. I don't think we're keeping Jim off of Tron.
It's going to be tough.
And I was kind of going to say that we said if you can keep him off of Tron, the game's easier. I was going to say I agree, but you never keep Tron decks off Tron. That's not how this works.
Right. Once Jim has it, if he starts getting cast triggers off of, say, an Ulamog, that can just close the game by itself, even if you counter the Ulamog.
That is true. There are some threats that no counter spell works against. So on Jim's side, if he wants Tron next turn, he can have it. He can just play map and then play the tower. I think he's debating whether or not he wants to try to hit something different with Ancient Strings or just go for the sure thing.
Yeah.
He will use Mine to cast Expedition Map. I wonder, I mean, Brennan could Ceremonious Rejection this, but that's a big fight.
And heads up against a known Worm Coil engine. That's dicey.
Yeah, especially, and he's going to. The risk here, Ryan, is that there's still a Stirrings left in Jim's hand, so it's just...
His odds of finding Tron are not terrible.
High. He's going to go through Chromatic Sphere to get a green mana. Draws a Relic.
You might actually just activate the Relic here to push DecCandio off of a Delve threat.
I like that a lot on Jim's side. Now, there is the problem that if Brennan just plays Death Shadow, you look a little silly.
Yeah. I think it's worth the risk.
Yeah, there's a lot of great Snapcaster targets in Brennan's yard, too.
Yep.
So then Brennan's going to... Jim will do that play, draw a card.
I like the play.
And he draws a Tron piece. I think it's another Mine.
I believe so.
Okay, so he's not just... I mean, if you cracked Relic and got the third Tron piece, that's just the best play you can make there by a lot.
Ooh, draws Sylvan Scrying.
Okay.
It is a fine pickup.
Yeah, missed land drop for Brennan as well. I mean, that's just the thing with these green Tron decks. You don't get to keep them off Tron forever. That's just not how it works.
And Brennan kept 7. I like what he's done mostly. The fact that there's no threat is troubling.
Yeah, Sylvan Scrying for Jim. I mean, that's what we said. The test in this matchup is actually still on Grixis. You know, he can't control the game forever. He needs the pressure.
Right.
And now Jim has made Tron, finding Urza's power plant.
Yeah, and treading water is fine and all against a number of decks, but it's just the cast triggers that make that impossible in this matchup.
Yeah, says go, 5 mana up, and Brennan shoots a lightning bolt at Jim. He's down to 17. That's fine. Brennan drawing Street Wraith.
Might already have Snapcaster Mage, trying to set it up so he can use that lightning bolt on the following turns to go upstairs.
Yeah, Cycle Street Wraith finds Opt. He just doesn't have threats. Yep. He has another Ceremonious in hand, so he'll cover. The Worm Coil won't beat him, but Jim's going to just, you know, Jim still has an Ancient Stirrings, I believe.
Yes.
So he can find more threats with it.
Never takes long.
Yeah. So interesting development over on table 3. Ben Reagan playing Affinity is going to lose his win and in match. So what that means is that we got 5 players in the top 8. This match here, the winner should really just be locked. It opens up an extra spot. They were already playing for what would be the 8th place spot. Now they're playing for the 7th place slot. It's hard for them to get breaker jumped twice.
Yeah. You see Jim resolving an Ancient Stirrings here.
Those of you wondering what that means down the line, it actually opens the door. There's a match on our backup match. We have Jadine Clemperens and Greg Smith. One of those could top 8 with a win now. Previously, they were not in a situation for that.
It's exciting. Yeah, Jim picks up Oblivion Stone here, though. Nothing to kill just yet.
Yeah. He probably figures I bet Jim figures there's a counterspell waiting the way Brennan's just been playing this. The question is whether he just runs into it anyway.
He has multiple Tron pieces. He's actually not that far off from casting multiple very expensive spells on the same turn.
Here's Oblivion Stone and then Worm Coil. Brennan's going to stop on that one. Ceremonious away the Worm Coil. So Jim gets to keep an Oblivion Stone. His last card is just another Urza's Mine. Out of threats for now, but who else is out of threats is Brennan.
He was never into threats.
Right. Opt. Thoughtseize. No. Too late.
Yeah. Pass.
He's top decking. I already knew that. He draws one anyway. Jim says I have an Urza's Mine.
Can't take that one.
Okay, Brennan taps out, says go. Hopes, just don't play something big.
Yeah, please never draw action.
Okay, so far so good. Jim passes.
Plays Sanctum Amugan. That means when Jim finds one big threat, he'll have 2.
Yeah, and Brennan picked up Disdainful Stroke, but that doesn't matter here because of the Sanctum Amugan.
Jim puts a fate counter on Oblivion Stone.
That doesn't do anything.
It changes the aesthetic of the battlefield.
Do you like to start putting second fate counters on your cards?
You think that I've cast Oblivion Stone?
Maybe in Cube. Probably not in Cube. And here's Karn. He found it off Chromatic Sphere.
Nice. So you kind of want to count your mana. You can like Karn and Ulamog in the same turn. You have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You have 13 with the mines. He's a bit off of doing too much on the same turn.
Right, so he's going here for 7. Remember, there is a mana floating. He'll cast Karn, cracking Sanctum of Ugin. That does work off Planeswalkers. So now he can search for a colorless creature, put it in hand. And I have to think you just want...
one that exiles 2 lands.
One that's fine, good against Disdainful Stroke. That seems fine.
That's the kind of card you're in the market for.
Indeed.
How much mana do you have? Is it more than 10? Looks like it's more than 10.
Brennan actually can, if he can counter here, untap and Thoughtseize. If he still has one, he's had a lot of extra Thoughtseizes that haven't done anything.
You described one to the bottom.
Yeah, well, he has a Snapcaster, so an untapped land will let him, and I think Jim recognizes this, and that's why getting Worldbreaker is a much better play.
Yeah, he found a card that he can just get back in the face of a Thoughtseize.
I really like that from Jim.
Yeah, pretty heads up.
So Karn's countered, and now Worldbreaker, yeah, even if Brennan Thoughtseizes it, Jim has enough mana to sack out, use the ability, sack the land, get back Worldbreaker, cast it again.
Also, Brennan's on 7. Won't take long for the Worldbreaker to close.
Right. And Brennan draws Thought Scour. He's just not hit his lands for long enough. Really just hasn't found a threat. I mean, he has Disdainful Stroke, Thought Scour, Kolaghan's Command. None of this matters.
Yeah.
Scours another Ceremonious into the yard. Street Wraith's down to 5.
That's 1 Worldbreaker hit.
There's a land. It's a swamp. He can Disdainful Stroke the Worldbreaker, but that doesn't matter. These are cast triggers.
Yeah.
Until pass.
He also still just has no way to win the game. And it's going to take 2 threats because Jim's just hanging out with his Oblivion Stone.
Sure. Draws another Tron piece. The last Urza's Mine. Here's 7 and Worldbreaker. Exiles and start going after Brennan's lands. He can get it. I guess no, the Disdainful Stroke's even gone. I'm not sure we have a counter.
And he has a Snapcaster Mage, but only 2 mana up.
Takes the Watery Grave. Yep, Brennan flashes Snapcaster into play. Targets something, but that's fine.
Yep.
Doesn't have the mana to cast it.
Use this to chump block so as not to lose immediately.
Yeah. Draws Kolaghan's Command, and this is probably going to send us to a 3rd game. He will terminate Worldbreaker. Jim's going to get it back immediately.
Big attack for 2 from Brennan.
Now, sacks one of those 4 mines, buys back Worldbreaker. Untap, so we're going to break more worlds. I think the Steam Vents is up next. Or it's got Karn. It's got choices.
Sure.
Whatever you want.
I assume it's just Worldbreaker. Get rid of that Steam Vents because...
Let's get Karn.
Okay.
Get rid of the Steam Vents that way, too, and get rid of them all. Brennan packs up the cards, and they're going to head to a 3rd game.
Yeah, I really did not love Brennan's keep there.
Well, there's just so much to ask for in the Grixis keep because he needs to have these lands. He needed these he had the Ceremonious Rejection, Stubborn Denial. He had 2 Ceremonious. Great lands to cast them, but then no threat. He just needs this perfect mix.
Yeah, the mix that he had did leave something to be desired just in a basic functionality sense. It's just a 1-lander and didn't really have selection and just kind of got run over.
You're missing both. So between lands, threats, and counters, missing 1 is fine, but missing 2, maybe not?
Missing 2 on 7, I think you should send back the overwhelming majority of the time.
All right, well, they're going to have a 3rd game. They'll be back in just a minute. I think it's like fair. I'm willing to miss one of the 2, but not. So the match, Brennan DecCandio here and Jim Davis for the teammates, down to 1 game to decide which of the two will be going on to the top 8. Jim has been on 6 cards both times. That time it didn't really seem to matter. Brennan couldn't present a threat, and eventually he was overpowered.
Yeah, Brennan will be on the play. Like to see, even with the advantage of the play, I'd like to see a better hand from Brennan in this game.
I have an interesting one. We saw Brennan actually sideboard in his lightning bolts for this matchup, and that surprised me.
It lets you be more aggressive with your Snapcaster mages. And it also can have kind of a time walk-esque effect. It's not because you're fighting over any kind of permanent with it. Creatures or planeswalkers, you're just going upstairs.
So it's not like you Karn, hit my land, and then I bolt your Karn. That's not what we're doing.
Right. It's like I have these fatal pushes in my main deck, and they're not very good.
Oh, is it really just a numbers game of I have so many dead cards that at least bolt it does something?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a Dismember for fatal push. Like, he has some good cards in his sideboard, clearly, but he has a good number of ones he wants to bring out.
We also have 4 spots remaining in the next booster.
But yeah, frequently in these Snapcaster Bolt matchups against Tron, if your first threat is Snapcaster Mage, you really like it to just be Lightning Bolt upstairs, Snapcast, Lightning Bolt you. You don't get to do this if you have to fight with some kind of counterspell, but that does produce a lot of damage. Usually you just don't have that many turns to play the game before Tron takes over.
Both players on 7 for our deciding game 3. Brennan starts off with Street Wraith down to 18. Watery Grave to 16. It looks like he has a Ceremonious Rejection in hand and just passes. Just want to take some extra damage.
Yeah, and I would strongly consider using the Rejection if Jim led an Expedition map.
Yeah, it looks like Jim can lead on Star. I don't think that earns a Ceremonious Rejection.
No, I would pass on that.
He has Urza's Tower, Chromatic Star, Sylvan Scrying, Blooming Marsh, Ulamog, World Breaker. So Chromatic Star will be the start. Brennan, as you said, lets that one go. Drew Thoughtseize, that's something he may want to do here.
He's set up with a Shock Land so he can Shock Thoughtseize and cast Death Shadow. I believe he has already drawn one.
That all sounds great. So Shock, Thoughtseize, yep, down to 12. We'll see Jim's hand. Mentioned it before, so it's 2 lands, none of which are Tron lands, so Blooming Marsh, Llanowar Wastes.
And Thoughtseize informs whether or not you care to leave the counterspells you've drawn up.
Well, honestly, in Brennan's spot, I almost just want to take the Sylvan Scrying. Jim is pretty far off Tron right now.
I don't think there's an almost about it. I think that's just a take.
Brennan will knock Jim farther off Tron. So Jim has a Relic, 2 Eldrazi, and 2 lands. Brennan makes a 1/1.
He has drawn Island, this card hanging out in his hand. He'd like to have more damage sources for himself.
Yeah. Nothing, and now that we're on green-black instead of green-red, Tron, he's not worried about anything like Grove of the Burn Willows here.
You're right. Has to be a little concerned about Jim drawing a fatal push, but
sure,
can't really do anything about that.
Chromatic Star for Jim. He'll draw under Chromatic Sphere. Did draw Ancient Stirrings for the turn, so he's going to try to rebuild Tron.
Yep.
And there's going to be Stirrings, finding a Tron piece, hopefully.
Still looking for a second piece.
Yeah, he needs 2. And he does find one.
Looks to be a unique one, too.
Yep, his options are Power Plant, Walking Ballista. I don't even think it matters. He's taking the Power Plant.
Yeah, he's kind of have to.
Plays it, can set up either Relic or Sphere, but he'll take Relic and shoot away the Thoughtseize, and then pass. More that Brendan will shoot away the Thoughtseize.
Right.
Tassiger pickup for DecCandio.
Well, that makes the Relic seem a lot better.
Well, the Relic is actually tapped, and Jim is tapped out. Brennan in hand has a Kolaghan's Command. There's an option here for him to just blow that up.
Yeah, it's reasonable to go for that, and he did leave Street Wraith in the graveyard, so I think he's eyeing using the Kolaghan's Command, get that back, cycle again, grow the Shadow.
Okay, so destroy Relic and bring Street Wraith back to hand?
Yes. There's an argument for shocking himself and grabbing Street Wraith if he thinks he can win the game without messing with the graveyard, because that's +4 on the Shadow.
He's going to get back to Street Wraith. We'll see whether he shocks himself or destroys the Relic. Nah, you're right. Shock yourself, get back Street Wraith. Brennan goes down to 8 when he cycles.
I do like that.
And he swings.
He picked up Teamer Battle Rage.
Okay.
That's
I like this line a lot.
Yeah, this game is over quickly. Jim's going to have to find Tron fast.
Well, right now the Shadow's only a 5/5, so I guess Brennan needs to give it 3. He needs 1 fetch land to make this lethal next turn. That's not that much to ask.
Right. It's lethal in 2 no matter what.
Yeah, it's lethal in 1 with a fetch.
Right.
And he has ceremonious rejection as well.
Yeah, once he gets to untap, things get really bad for Jim. Kind of want to go with some of these replacement, these redraws, use your relic, use your chromatic star, try to find fatal push now.
Jim is in a lot of trouble.
Number 9, booster draft number 9. Your draft.
It's one of these fast shadow stars. We're talking about how important they would be on Brennan's side, and really, he's done just that this time.
Your draft is ready to begin.
Jim's going for some redraws. He's going to star here. Just picks up a land, though, and not even a Tron land. With the land drop this turn, he'll still have the ability to try to redraw into Fatal Push.
Chromatic Star, Blooming Marsh, draws. Does he hit that push? No, it's a Llanowar Waste. Okay, so now he needs to dodge the fetch land.
Yep.
No way about it. Exiles the graveyards. He'll get a card here with that floating mana, but now he's out. He finds Urza's Mine, so he has Tron if he gets to untap.
So Brennan now is untapping with counter magic at the ready.
Yeah, so he swings 5. Didn't have the fetch land to win, but here's another shadow. And he passes. He passes with Ceremonious and Stubborn Denial up. I don't know.
The shadows without Battle Rage are also lethal.
Jim has to fight through more counter magic than he reasonably can. Here's Urza's Mine. He'll have 8 mana.
Yeah, so he makes World Breaker. It gets countered. Even though he can exile the Blood Crypt,
Sure.
the double shadow is still lethal on the following turn.
And here's 8. It's World Breaker. Brennan can ceremoniously reject. This is devoid, so it's counterable by it. It's gone. Jim casts Relic. He's at 10, and it says go. And this looks good.
I think Brennan will figure this one out.
And he sends them on in. So it is Brennan, DecCandio, and Grixis Death's Shadow. He wins the Battle of Teammates in 3, and at 12-3, he is headed to the top 8.
Yeah, for Jim Davis, it was a good run, but 11-4, not going to do it. You obviously 2 players on a team here. They would really like to both be in the top 8, but it was only meant for one of them to make it, and that's going to be Brennan DecCandio on Grixis Death's Shadow.
So congratulations to Brennan. He gets our